Let's talk about Final Fantasy VII, or more specifically, how something so perfectly self-contained, emotionally devastating, and narratively complete was later reanimated like a corporate-sponsored Frankenstein's monster, stitched together with motorcycle chases, bad poetry, and progressively worse haircuts. I want to begin by making it clear, I adore the original Final Fantasy VII. I grew up with it. It was weird, melancholic, morally grey, all the things your average child desperately needs while the real world tries to teach them long multiplication. It had eco-terrorism, identity crises, corporate overlords, and a protagonist who, in retrospect, was essentially having a mental breakdown in real time while a magically magenta meteor hurtled towards the Earth. It was, in a word, glorious. And then came the compilation, the so-called Extended Universe. Now, when I hear Extended Universe, I expect some measure of added depth, richer world building perhaps, or new characters that enhance what came before. What I don't expect is something like Dirge of Cerberus, which feels like someone handed Vincent Valentine a gun and told him he was in Devil May Cry. But you're not Vincent. You're really not. They lied to you. The game was so poorly received it became a kind of cautionary tale, like smoking or befriending murderous clowns.
Hiya, Georgie.
It was meant to flesh out Vincent, the most brooding man in a game full of brooding men, and instead it became an accidental satire, a great cutscene with some incidental gameplay orbiting around it. The writing in these spin-offs often feels like a group of very tired men trying to translate the subtleties of an Isha painting armed only with an Etch-a-Sketch, whilst the oxygen is slowly removed from the room they're sat in. Let's take Crisis Core, for instance, a game that had one job, make us love Zack Fair. And to its credit, it sort of does. Zack is charming, earnest, ridiculously chipper, considering he works for a company that turns people into kaiju with PTSD. But then we meet Genesis, a man who speaks only in loveless quotes, as if his brain were replaced by a magnetic poetry set gifted by the world's most passive-aggressive mother-in-law. Every line is delivered with the solemnity of a war memorial, except it's bloody nonsense, and no one seems willing to tell him to shut up. It's like he's put Shakespeare's more verbose plays and all the worst World of Warcraft guild names in a hat and pulled out words at random. The writing veers from overwrought melodrama to unintentional comedy like a drunk tightrope walker. 1 minute you're cringing at the terrible romantic dialogue, then next you're twatting monsters with an umbrella, and finally you're genuinely weeping over Zack's fate, though that was taken from the far superior OG. And Advent Children? Oh dear. Imagine taking a story famous for its raw, intimate emotion and deciding what it really needed was a boy band of silver-haired villains doing aerial ballet in a world where gravity is a suggestion rather than a rule. The film is beautiful to look at, I'll give it that, but it's all sizzle, no steak. A Michelin-starred plastic apple. You can't eat it, but it sure is shiny. And the English VA performances, Christ on a bike, they were terrible. Some of the cast not so much as phoned it in, more threw over a yogurt pot with a piece of string attached to it.
Dilly-dally, shilly-shally.
And I know it's not entirely their fault, and it's partly the nature of dubbing JP Productions, but some characters, such as Sephiroth, absolutely nailed it, despite these same challenges.
Give me the pleasure of taking it away.
Cloud spends the entire film in full brooding mode, which is a regression from the end of OG. Tifa gets to fight in what is possibly the finest ADHD enabler of all time, but emotionally she's relegated to the role of your mother, with that constant, when are you going to tidy your room tone and expression.
Dilly-dally,
And Barrett's somewhere off screen, presumably having a personality, I don't know. There's also this weird vibe with the whole film regarding romance. Like they're too scared to commit as it would alienate a certain ship. They don't portray Cloud and Tifa as romantically together, but also seem too fearful to acknowledge that Cloud misses Aerith, instead focusing on his guilt.
You see, everything's alright.
It's just non-committal, and it feels like the film suffers as a result. I could genuinely talk about this for hours, but as the helium balloon says to the broken-hearted child, onwards and upwards. All of this, Crisis Core, Advent Children, Dirge of Cerberus, the whole sprawling mess felt like retconning for retconning's sake. Suddenly, Sephiroth could clone himself. And if you read Livestream White, Aerith can too. Hojo's back. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Logic checked out halfway through the compilation, hasn't been seen since. Then there's the characterization. What I always loved about FF7 was the fact that many of my favourite characters did have dickish streaks. Tifa was more unapologetically angry, more passionate about the Avalanche cause. Cid was a complete shit at times, but with a good heart. Cloud was a douchebag for much of the game, and even Aerith had some pretty serious side-eye moments. This complexity pulled me in. In the OG, Zack was an interesting character, from what little we saw of him. He seemed to have layers. Although he kindly rescued Cloud and obviously had a rapport with him, Zack was also a shameless ladies' man. Someone hinted to be a little morally grey without that emphasis on duty and integrity. The Extended Universe started to iron out some of these complexities. Zack was portrayed as a golden retriever character with very little nuance. Whilst Cloud is perfectly imperfect, Zack is imperfectly perfect. He also became the driver for Aerith's character development, which I could get behind, if it were not so clumsily done. Sometimes the best storytelling isn't imposed, it's left with the reader. You don't have to explain every single thing, whether it be Aerith's pink ribbon, her pink dress, or how she developed her flirtatious nature. We're all influenced by the people we meet and love, but Aerith genuinely felt rewritten because of Zack, and that's not a good thing. Having CC dictate what happens in the OG feels like the very insignificant tail wagging the big bloody dog. But then something happened. Final Fantasy VII Remake arrived, and for the first time in years, I felt like the series had remembered what it was for. It wasn't about flashy editing, or terrible poetry, or pretending the planet was powered by sadness. It was about people, messy, broken, and deeply human. Remake took that narrow slice of the original, Midgar, and gave it a life. It felt alive, breathing. Tifa was interesting again. Barrett was brilliant, passionate, funny, over the top, but always grounded in a sort of righteous anger. And Cloud? Still emotionally constipated, yes, but in a way that felt purposeful and dynamic, like someone who's trying, and we could finally see the real Cloud on numerous occasions. But importantly, Aerith. She appeared with a brand new dynamic, an understanding of the future. It posed 1,000 exciting questions about what this series could be. People think that seeing a remake of OG beat for beat is a good thing, but you can never ever recapture the magic of the OG, and the devs would never want to. As a creator, you want to create, not spend 10 years of your life producing a glorified tech demo. Then came Rebirth, and it did something I didn't expect. It made me fall in love with the world of FF7 again. It made me care again. Not because it followed the same locations as the original, but because they were rebuilding the mythos with care and clarity. Yes, there was a fair amount of Ubisoft busy work, but there were so many beautiful moments that I really didn't care. What I love most about Remake and Rebirth is that they're not afraid to challenge the original, or subvert it, or even to take it in a different direction. But they do it with thought, with respect. There's confidence to the storytelling. The writing is sharp, the performances are strong, and even when it's strange, it's meaningfully strange, intriguingly strange. Which brings me to the final point. I want this new trilogy to supersede Advent Children. Fully. I want AC politely but firmly escorted from the canon, thanked for its time, and locked in a cupboard marked 2005 we tried. Because the tone, the heart, the clarity of these new entries is so vastly superior that to tie them back to the tangled mess of the compilation would be like attaching an elephant to a drowning man and saying, "Here, this might help you swim." True, the team have said Advent Children is linked to these newer games, but that can mean a myriad of different things. And I'm genuinely hoping AC is one of the many stamp worlds we are beginning to discover. The original Final Fantasy VII didn't need a dozen add-ons to be great. It was great because it trusted the player to connect the dots. Remake and Rebirth remember that. They're not afraid to be strange, emotional, sometimes even absurd, but they earn those moments. They're not weighed down by lore bloat or narrative debt. So yes, I love Final Fantasy VII. I love it enough to hate what's been done to it in the past.
Hello? That's all I did.
But I love what's being done to it now. And if that means rewriting, replacing, and outright ignoring bits of the extended universe, frankly, I think that's an act of mercy.